Today we are going to talk about mastering mood boards, whether for you as a creative or if you're actually working on projects as a designer or a marketer for a brand. I'm going to go through all the tools from Are.na to Pinterest to Cosmos to Millanote and Foreplay and what exactly you do in each of them, and why you might want to use them for what kind of work. I'm going to show you some examples from my boards and other boards. And I'm going to walk through the creative toolkit. What are some of the apps that are outside of these boards you can use to populate what you're working on with ideas? This is one of my favorite topics. I'm working in boards all the time. I both love making them and effectively using them on projects. So I'm stoked to walk through it with y'all. Let's lock in. So first, let's talk about tools. And I'm going to start with the one that's least covered first, and that is Are.na. That is ARE.na. And so Are.na is interesting because it is the least functional of the mood board platforms. The UI is a little bit brutalist. Everything is a little bit harder to configure and share than any other network, but it has the best references. All may be a stretch, but majority of creative professionals are using this as where they're actually putting the real work that they use. And there's lots of references here that aren't caught in the same algorithm as the other Pinterest board, like Pinterest and Cosmos and whatnot, showing you the same stuff. So how does this work? When you get to a block on Are.na, like this IKEA 1984 catalog, and you go down the side here, these are all the other boards that link to this. And what's nice about Are.na is you can pick something completely random. Like I'm just going to pick 2508 and go into this board here. And it's just going to be filled with, this is like an amazing set of like interior content, right? So you can connect to your boards. There's source links for a lot of it, but there's just much better inspiration actually working through here. But really you're exploring, you're finding starting points, you're following some boards and seeing where it can go. What's nice is you can find art directors who are really doing work and putting together super comprehensive boards for their projects like you see here, and actually find like pretty amazing inspiration and shoots really regularly. And so what it lacks in search functionality and some of these other things to source is really truly greatly a discovery platform for finding awesome stuff. And I can't recommend highly enough using this as part of your image sourcing workflow. So what do you actually do in here? So one of my favorite recommendations for creatives of all time, if you've watched a lot of my older videos where I talked a lot about creativity and life more, I emphasize swapping your scrolling from like consuming TikTok and like, God forbid, like X, Instagram Reels into mood boarding. And so I use the app OneSec. I also use the hardware piece Brick. And I basically limit access to social media, except for times I have set on my calendar to do work on social media where I will browse specifically to be like, I need to find stuff for these projects, or I just want to check in and see what's happening to kind of prevent the scrolling that eats your time. But instead, I let that scrolling time, that downtime, live in the mood board apps, live in Cosmos, live in Pinterest, and live in Are.na. And to use that effectively, you need a framework of boards you can add stuff to. And I'm going to get to that at the end of the video. I'm going to walk through like brand board frameworks, and I'm going to walk through individual board frameworks that are helpful for that. But in case you're wondering like, okay, what do I do? How do I get this? I would be spending time weekly, like inside these platforms, just finding interesting things and attaching them to a little framework of boards that you have for your various creative work. And you will continually be shocked as you go through Are.na at the quality and intensity level of what is out there. So next up, we have Cosmos. I love Cosmos too for a few reasons. So first, they have a For You page on there that is very accurate. So if you were to look at the boards that I'm working on right now, what they are showing me is extremely accurate to it. And so it's nice to have a feed that's actually good, that's relevant to the stuff that I'm putting on boards. Is a great feature of Cosmos. Same thing with the feed of who I'm following. They also have discover functions where they have a curated algorithm that is excellent. Their curation team is incredible, and they're always putting really interesting stuff on the feed, albeit noting that it is always like super artistic and tasteful. I know not everyone works in those kind of worlds. But one of the other best functions of Cosmos is the ability to search by color. So I can go in here and say this particular shade of green, and then I can do packaging or whatever it is that I am looking for. Apply this color search. All right, I didn't find anything that's in there. I'm just going to start with this color overall. So the ability to find anything that has a similar color. Same thing when I switch over to this red, being able to just find things that work in there, and then narrow the search down. So again, I pop into packaging here. They didn't have any results when I was showing that green, but there's plenty here that work under that red, kind of in similar color schemes. You can go actually dial down a notch into what you're searching for is a nice touch. And you will see I actually do lots of boards. We'll talk about this later when I get to board structure. In my Cosmos boards here, 90% of these are public, so you can go hack around in them. And I am building color stories for brands based on these functions. Like this board was built by putting like 3 color codes in one at a time, and we were kind of going through trying to figure out if these colors went well with each other and what that kind of journey of those working together would look like is like a board like this, for example. And they also have in this function, trending stuff, recent categories, etc. So the downside of Cosmos is that there just isn't as much stuff on there. But it's a great way to hunt through a lot of really tasteful and artful stuff of what they do have. And since it's a newer network, more and more stuff I assume is going to get added over time. And then we have Pinterest. So Pinterest is still excellent. They actually got rid of a lot of the AI stuff I was complaining about a while back, where it used to be like a lot of AI on the feed. The only downside is it's just ads all over. It's just sponsored content. Like literally every single row is showing you sponsored content. So you're constantly having your eyes drawn to another priority that's not your search. And that's the hardest problem I have on this is I just don't know why they have to show so many impressions like inside these scrolls. It completely ruins the scrolling experience. But they still have great sharing, collaboration, and an amazing image library that lives on Pinterest. And brands also do a good job of actually positioning themselves on there. Quick note on that, one of my favorite brands on there, Le Creuset, 50,000 followers. They have a bunch of different, whether it's their actual individual products, and they'll actually go into color. When they launch a new color, they put color stories and combinations that work with that color inside Pinterest. So it's a great navigation to find if people are like working on their kitchen. I think there's a lot of brands, whether you sell interior objects or anything, that could use this kind of treatment that could take a similar approach. That's not the point of the video. We'll talk about Pinterest marketing at a different time. Now we're going to talk about Millanote. You've probably seen Millanote. They sponsored a number of my videos, but they are like a big note board. You can't source images on there, but it's a great way to organize them. So for instance, if I have a bunch of different mood boards, that actually is not helpful for the way that I think. So I think in like seeing things next to each other. I want to see my mood boards, like this is my brand mood board. This is what I was doing in 2024. This is where I'm moving by the end of 2025. I want to be able to have those stories in these big old boards, embed things, play things, leave notes. And so a good workflow, one I'll do all the time, is I will build a Cosmos board. I will download everything from the Cosmos board. They also have a one-click board download as a zip, which is amazing. I will literally whip it into Millanote to be able to actually move that around, add notes, combine with some of my tech packs, like make it make sense as a brand workflow. I do the same thing for art direction. I have a running list of art direction concepts I want to try on upcoming shoots, where I keep these like basically a bunch of little mini boards with my notes and my little references and stuff down here and ideas and embeds all together. So that's more of a way of organizing your mood boards. But since you do get like, I think the first board is like free, unlimited. If you just have like a big brand board, it's a great way, or a big personal board, it's a great way to actually visually think of the stuff you grab from mood boards. And then we have Foreplay. What a lot of those other platforms don't contain is like actual ads and content. And so this is my Foreplay swipe files. This is all things I'm saving for ads, to create ads. And so I actually have them having saved, like this is like a represent comp, I believe. There's a couple represent comps in there, some Skims ads, where I'm able to actually save and create boards and swipe files of different like advertising types and styles, which is useful in its own way. And I can easily import those links into other mood board software. But it's also useful from a discovery perspective as well. Because if I do want to add things to it, you can actually have the ability to go inside, and I can literally go search sneakers, or I can search a brand, and I can actually find advertisements for this. And if you are doing tactical level work, or say, hey, I want to go look at everything Reformation has in their ad library, I want to use some of those for examples, you can actually find all of that within Foreplay and scroll back through it and monitor those things, which just gives you access to a whole different, way more practical ad set if you're just purely looking at visuals, as you break down kind of the difference between these different apps. That's a good one. And I do think that's important because, like, for instance, you're never going to find these ads inside Pinterest, but there's a lot of these like looks or text placement. Be like, man, they are running a lot of creative that looks a certain way or has a certain feel that you want to make sure you're able to add and save. So that's where software like this comes in handy. But that was the mood boarding, guys. What else is in the creative toolkit? What else helps you like get inspiration and actually use it, and like add to these apps and begin to tell your stories? I have a massive list of different like resources that I use. I'm going to share a few of my favorites here I think you're going to find useful. So this is Cover Junkie. This is a collection of magazine covers. I love this because magazine covers are like the OG hooks, right? You need to be able to pick up the cover based on who's on it or how crazy the image is to actually buy it. And so I find a lot of hook inspiration and visual hook inspiration from covers. And you can go and actually pare down. They have all of these different categories and best of. You can go by every magazine title. You can go by keywords. You can just find absolute tons and tons and tons of images in here. And so let me go find an example example, and look how many, this is so many. So I'm gonna go down to I'm gonna say, cool, I wanna look at all the interview mag covers. And so actually show me every interview mag that they have inside the database. That's a great look as well. If you start getting into like weird foreign titles or whatever it is, you can find a lot of interesting inspiration in what they do there. Another one is the art of the title. This is another one where this is basically title sequences from movies. You can look at how they did text placement, things like that. That again, as you begin to look at short form, you can get a lot of creative ideas, especially as everything gets increasingly cinematic. They have these great little collections of how they do it, nice related ones, and it's fun to actually go through, especially to things like, like more B-movie style, and kind of see what those graphic treatments are like. It's more good inspiration for you. And then one of the most useful is eye candy. So eye candy has all of these different shot types you can use for videos and different ideas. For projections. I have a bunch of examples of the shot type, a little bit of how they did it, the technique and where it's used, and all these different filters to go through it. And you can be like, all right, what do you mean by match cut? All right, let's show some examples. And they'll actually just run you through. You can go through these galleries of shot type examples. So if you are filming something, whether it's an ad or a music video or a short form video, you have this world that you can live in of just awesome visual inspiration and shot types with actual names you can use to describe to a videographer or build out your creative toolkit. So let's talk about what you do with all this stuff. And so I'll talk about brand workflow and creative workflow. And I recommend having like a workflow for each of what you do with boards and inspiration to organize it. So for brands, having a mood board just for campaign ideas. Number one, campaign and lookbook ideas. Number two, for product and product inspo. Now you can have just these big master boards with everything, or you can start to break it down seasonally or yearly, depending on how robust it is, but at least having those and having one that's more brand focused. So a lot of designers will have like a type one and a color or type and graphic, or they just have one overall graphic board. But if you have at least those three boards, like here's what we're doing graphically, type and fonts and color, here's what we're doing with product, here's what we're doing with campaigns, it gives you the ability to save a whole number of things like at any time. And like literally, so like this is a board for valuable shoots. This is just shoot ideas, things for me that I'm like, hey, I want to try this. Like I recreated this shot in a shoot recently. Or we're thinking about doing a filter like this when I'm shooting some vehicles in the future. Like, okay, how can we put our own spin on making like a compilation of something like that? Like I have these big boards of things that I want to try for shoots. Well, at the same time, when we were working on a brand identity and another project, I was saving a bunch of things for that pitch just in this one simple font board. But if you have those, it gives you a framework to consistently be adding to. If you are creative and you work in creative, I would have a couple different buckets there. So I would have a board for every brand and every project that you're working on, you can add stuff to. And I'd have a couple overall boards. Typography, no matter what your life is going to interact with type, I would be saving some typography boards. Same thing with ads or inspiration by industry if you work in multiple industries. And then just a personal board of just things you like, having some big setups. I have a few of these. We can just save stuff that is special to you for whatever reason so you don't lose it in your head later on. That is a great way to set up. And then what I usually end up doing is every Sunday night, one of the things I used to do to combat like Sunday anxiety is I would organize all my bookmarks for the week. So Sunday nights I would go through my Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it was, and I would put my bookmarks into my boards or into action items in my to-do list. It was a calming thing for me that made me feel like I'm getting ahead, got some value, and also meant I didn't lose all those references you just save in your bookmarks in perpetuity. That's always an exercise I do. And if you are doing those things where every week you're adding your references somewhere, and in free time instead of scrolling, you're like mood boarding and adding stuff to these important boards, you'll find when you show up into creative conversations or go to do a project, you have this massive base that you've built that allows you to really be able to crush things out. And even when you're building pitches for clients, I recommend thinking about it the same way. You don't want to build just one big mood board. Build a smaller board for type. Doesn't take a ton of items to get your point across. You can have 5, 10 things on a mood board. Like even 3 to 7 things that are perfectly positioned is like super useful. The clarity of thought. Like a mood board for type, a mood board for color, a mood board for packaging. It allows you to remove that like indecipherable, like, oh, I kind of like this, but with a little bit of that, like feedback. It's like, okay, well, let's get feedback on the type. Like which of these 3 images matter the most? Like there's the ability to kind of get more concrete. You'll see you're working with big web firms, you're working with folks that are going to be dialing into lots of smaller mood boards, like inside what they ask for feedback for. That's one of the best tools you have is like send somebody a mood board, allow them to remove the items that they don't like or get feedback on it. And they can come up with boards that allow you to navigate through what people like and don't and how you actually bring that creative vision to life. So anyway, if you want to explore more, this ties really well into the art direction videos I do. I've got one on road that I think is underrated. I've also got one on Stussy that I imagine most of y'all have seen. You can dive in more into art direction in those videos there. If you have any questions on this, you have any other tools other people should know that may want to see in the comments, please drop below. And I appreciate y'all so much. Please drop a like, subscribe, all those things. And thank you so much for watching.